I wonder if this is our first clue.
What if we told you there was once a cartoon about a dog solving crimes with karate? Back in the 1970s, cartoons were seriously weird, and some were so bizarre, it's hard to believe they ever aired on TV. Like, who thought it was a good idea to turn the Harlem Globetrotters into superheroes? Today, we're digging up 9 strange cartoons from the 70s that actually existed, and the last one will make you wonder how it got greenlit in the first place. What if your office janitor was actually a superhero in disguise and also a dog? That's exactly what Hong Kong Phooey was all about. The main character, Penry Pooch, worked as a quiet janitor at a police station. But whenever there was danger, he'd jump into a filing cabinet, change clothes, and come out as Hong Kong Phooey, the world's clumsiest kung fu crime fighter. The funny part? He was actually really bad at kung fu. Like, really bad. He'd trip over things, mess up moves, and usually cause more problems than he fixed. But somehow everything always worked out in the end, thanks mostly to his cat sidekick Spot, who secretly did all the hard work behind the scenes. This show mixed martial arts with comedy and gave kids a silly hero to root for every Saturday morning.
And then quick as a flash, I'll pop out of the top drawer as superhero Hong Kong Phooey.
The animation was simple, the jokes were goofy, and the voice of Hong Kong Phooey was done by the legendary Scatman Crothers, which gave the character a cool, jazzy vibe. Okay, but what if real-life athletes became superheroes, with the weirdest powers you've ever seen? Can you imagine basketball players with superpowers saving the world? Well, that's exactly what the Harlem Super Globetrotters was all about. The real-life Harlem Globetrotters, famous for their crazy basketball tricks, were turned into cartoon superheroes. And not just regular heroes, we're talking weird powers. One guy could turn into liquid and slide under doors. Another could grow extra arms like an octopus to catch stuff or block attacks. There was even a guy who could twist into a spaghetti-shaped basketball ball. Yeah, it was that kind of show. Each Globetrotter had their own strange ability, and together they stopped villains and solved wild problems around the world.
How about overwinding their tail?
Nah, I'll just have them catch mine. Give them a toss.
The show didn't try to make much sense. It was loud, fast, colourful, and kind of random. But that's what made it so fun to watch. You never knew what weird thing would happen next. So what happens when you throw 10 kids, a detective dad, and homemade gadgets into one cartoon? Think Scooby-Doo, but instead of a dog and 4 teenagers, imagine a detective dad with 10 kids solving mysteries. That's what Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan was all about. The main character, Mr. Chan, was a calm, smart detective inspired by the old Charlie Chan movies. But he wasn't working alone. He had a whole team made up of his kids, and every single one of them helped crack cases. The Chan kids were always building wild gadgets to catch criminals or get out of trouble. Some were into tech, some handled the music, and others just added chaos. They even had a family band and used a cool van to travel around. Kind of like the Partridge Family meets Mission Impossible. It was loud, busy, and full of action.
All set. Okay, we've got them surrounded. Stand by to move in.
But with 10 kids in one cartoon, there wasn't much time to really get to know any of them. Most of the characters didn't get a chance to shine, which made the show feel a bit messy. Alright, ready for the next one? Now this one's just straight up weird, in the best way. Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels was basically what you'd get if you mixed a caveman with Charlie's Angels. You had 3 stylish teen girls solving mysteries, and helping them out was a loud, wild caveman with a club and a lot of body hair. Captain Caveman, aka Cavey, was frozen in ice for thousands of years and somehow ended up helping the girls fight crime. He'd yell, "Captain Caveman!" at the top of his lungs, then crash into action.
Okay, Captain Caveman!
His main weapon? A giant wooden club that could fly and store random gadgets. And the crazy part? He could pull all kinds of tools and even animals out of his body hair like it was a magic bag. But wait till you meet a green dog who literally turns invisible when he gets scared. If you've ever watched Scooby-Doo and thought, what if the ghosts were actually real? Then you've basically got Goober and the Ghost Chasers. This cartoon followed a group of teens and their dog, Goober, as they traveled around solving spooky mysteries. But unlike Scooby, they weren't pulling off masks at the end. These ghosts were actually ghosts. Goober was a green dog who had one special and funny ability. Whenever he got scared, he turned invisible. The problem? He was scared all the time. So most of the time, the team would just be talking to thin air, and Goober would just be a floating collar or a pair of ears bobbing out. The show had a fun mix of goofy comedy and light scares.
Devotion to duty is one thing, but this is ridiculous.
But one of the coolest parts was the guest stars. The actual Partridge Family. Yes, the famous TV band appeared as cartoon versions of themselves in several episodes. It made the show feel kind of like a celebrity ghost hunt. Ghosts are spooky, but what about a robot dog sidekick whose gadgets always go wrong? Now picture this. Batman has a robot dog as a sidekick, and that dog constantly messes everything up. That's Dynomutt, Dog Wonder. The show followed a superhero named Blue Falcon and his robot dog partner, Dynomutt, as they protected Big City from supervillains. It all looked cool on the outside. High-tech cars, secret lairs, crime-fighting gear, but there was always one big problem. Dynomutt himself. Dynomutt had every gadget you could imagine. Stretchy arms, laser eyes, jet boosters, you name it. But every time he tried to help, something went wrong. His arm would fly off in the wrong direction, or he'd accidentally trap Blue Falcon instead of the bad guy. He meant well, but he was a walking disaster. That's where the comedy came in. Blue Falcon was this serious, no-nonsense hero, and Dynomutt was the total opposite. Goofy, clumsy, and always one step away from ruining everything. But somehow, they still managed to save the day, usually after a lot of chaos. Now get this. What if the detective was only 1 inch tall but still managed to catch bad guys? Sounds crazy, right? Well, that's the whole idea behind Inch High Private Eye. He was a tiny crime fighter who somehow managed to solve big mysteries, even though he was smaller than a soda can. Inch High worked for a detective agency and wore a special belt that kept him shrunk down. He also had a crew to help him out, including his niece Laurie, her boyfriend Gator, and their super loyal dog Braveheart. Together they traveled around in a cool-looking car called the Hushmobile, sneaking around and catching bad guys.
To be exact, the Pittsfield Pirates, which means the man we're after is the pirate captain.
Because Inch High was so small, the show used that as a fun twist. He'd sneak through keyholes, hide in pockets, and use tiny gadgets to spy on suspects. But let's be honest, half the time the show just made size jokes, like getting stuck in gum, almost being stepped on, or hiding in cereal boxes. Speaking of strange, why was this gorilla always for sale, and always getting returned? Ever heard of a gorilla who lived in a pet shop and was always on sale? That's Magilla Gorilla, a cartoon that made no sense but somehow became a classic. Magilla lived in Mr. Peebles' pet store, sitting in a big cage with a for sale sign around his neck. Every episode, someone would finally decide to buy him, but it never lasted long. Why? Because Magilla was a total disaster. He'd try to fit in, but things always went wrong. He'd cause chaos, break stuff, or scare people without meaning to. And by the end of every episode, he'd be brought back to the shop with Mr. Peebles shouting, "Not again!"
Oh no, Magilla, it's you!
The show pretty much repeated the same plot over and over, but it worked. Magilla was kind of clueless, but he had a big heart, and kids found him funny. He wasn't a bad gorilla, just in the wrong place every time. Looking back, it kind of made fun of how people treat pets like products, always wanting the next best thing, then returning them when it's not easy. But what happens when Yogi Bear races through space? What if Yogi Bear stopped stealing picnic baskets and started racing through space? That's exactly what happened in Yogi's Space Race. This cartoon took a bunch of Hanna-Barbera characters like Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, and even new ones, and threw them into wild, high-speed races across the galaxy. The whole show was kind of like Wacky Races, but with rocket ships and alien planets. Each episode had the characters competing in flying cars loaded with weird gadgets. Some ships turned into submarines, others could disappear or shoot out random tools. None of it made sense, but that was the fun. The races were full of crashes, traps, cheating, and crazy stunts. Yogi teamed up with a new character named Scarebear, and other teams included space versions of your favorite cartoon animals. Everyone was trying to win, but most of the time, the races ended in total chaos. So, which of these bizarre 70s cartoons do you remember, or can't believe was real? Drop your favorite in the comments.